morning, everybody. I want to talk to you about something that it's really important to remember. We a lot of times we get so focused on life that we forget that we need to prepare for our days. We forget sometimes we get up. Could be we overslept. It could be that something comes up, something's pressing, and we forget that we need to prepare for our day. And I'm thinking, one of the things that I'm just reflecting on this morning, I'm thinking about, the word, it talks about that we need to guard our heart. And I'm thinking specifically of Psalm 119, verses, the passage from verses 9 through 16, and it's talking about, keeping ourselves pure. It starts off about how can a young man keep his way pure? By bearing your word in my heart. And I'm thinking about, so we gotta ask ourselves, well, what is he talking about specifically? And I really believe the thing that he's referring to the most is that we need to start our day off with getting into the word. I think that I've talked about this before, that it's very important that when we wake up, we don't want to allow the things of the world to start clouding our mind. The best thing that we can do when we wake up is to get right into the word. And I know some people will be like, well, I got this, and this. But you know what? If you don't take the time to spend time with God, your day is going to be ineffective. If you don't take the time to spend your time with God, you're going to be distracted. You're going to be led astray. I think of many men of God who have fallen away from the Lord. These are men who God has used mightily that have fallen away because they didn't spend time with the Lord, or maybe they did read, but they didn't apply anything, right? When the psalmist is talking about bearing the word in our hearts, he's not just talking about just reading. He's talking about reflecting and seeing what it's talking about and allowing the change to happen. He's not just talking about just showing up to church once or twice a week, maybe 3 times, depending on what church you go to. He's talking about getting into the word and reflecting it and understanding what is being said, right? And allowing it to transform. I was at a recent revival, and somebody was talking about, the people that not everybody reads their Bible. There's I think if I remember the statistics correctly, 80% of American homes own a Bible in their homes. But you know what? Only 1 out of 5 people read their Bible. 80% of the American homes own a Bible, but only 1 out of 5 read their Bible. And that's just saying on a weekly basis. It's not even talking about on a consistent basis. We're not talking about on a daily basis. It's talking about a weekly basis. That's sad. If 80% of Americans own a Bible, and I'm talking about Americans, I'm not talking about for those who, I know there's other countries who watch this. I'm just talking specifically for Americans. If 80% of Americans own a Bible and 1 out of 5 of those read their Bible on a weekly basis, there's a problem, right? And the percentage drop even less than that about how many read them on a consistent basis, talking about getting in a daily basis. Here's the problem. We want to find out, we want to know why there's so much problems in America today or around the world. It's because we're not getting into the word. We're not believing that God is going to transform our lives. We're not believing that he's going to make changes to happen, because we're getting away from what God wants. We're getting away from hearing him. We're getting away from spending time with him. And I'm not talking about just in the word. That's important. Being in the word is very important, because that's where we hear God speak to us, right? But we need to spend time in prayer too. We need to lift up our petitions. Why do you think it says in 1 Peter that it talks about if you have any problems, take it to the Lord in prayer and ask your brothers to pray for you, right? We do not spend enough time with him. We need to guard our hearts. How do we guard our hearts? Getting into the word. Look at Psalm 119, verses 9 through 16. I encourage you today to spend some time in that passage, right? Just reflect on that. Listen to what he's saying. Don't just go and read it and say, okay, I read it. Go and reflect. Don't just spend time reading the word and not allowing it to speak to you. Reflect on what the word is saying, right? We need to guard our hearts. It saddens me to hear of men of God who they're just led astray because they've gotten away from on a daily basis, or they're regular studying, and we're looking at destruction that's going on, and when you go and you do research on the areas of it could be even just our city, Albuquerque, where why is there so much destruction going on in our cities, right? You don't have to look at just Albuquerque, look at Juarez, right? Why is there so much sadness, so much destruction going on? Because people are not spending time with the Lord. They're not guarding their heart. They're not bearing the word, as the psalmist says in 119, to bury the word in my heart, so that I will not be led astray, so that I can be faithful to the commandments you've given me. And the main commandments we got to remember, right, for us as the New Testament church is this: is love God first and then love others. Love God first and then love others. Love God first and love others. Why am I repeating that? Because that's what the commandments talk about. That's what the word is telling us. To spend time with God, to love him, to get to know him, to develop a relationship with him, and then to love others. Because even in 1 John it says, if you say you love God but you hate your brothers, you're a liar. You don't love God because you're saying you hate your brothers. God says to love others. We need to love him first, and then we need to love others. That means that we need to spend time in being careful of not going in and wishing death on others, not going in and committing murder, not going in and stealing, not going in and causing destruction, right? we need to bury the word, right? And something else we need to think about here too is that, you know, when let's do a word study for a minute. This is a small word study, okay? In John 1, it says, John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay? Look at Psalm 119. It says, how can I keep my ways pure? How can a young man keep his ways pure? By burying your word in my heart. Look at John 1 again. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So we understand what John is talking about is that the word, he's talking about Jesus, right? If you look at Psalm 119 again, it says, how can a young man keep his way pure? By bearing your word in my heart. He's talking about by putting Jesus into our hearts, right? If we allow Jesus to be in our hearts, we're going to see a transformation happen in our lives. And when we see the transformation in our lives, what we're going to find out is that we're going to learn how to love God. And when we learn how to love God, we're going to learn how to love others. And when we learn how to love others, we're going to see change happen, where we're going to see the destruction leave, where we're going to make changes in our areas. You know what? Instead of spending so much time worrying about how I'm going to feel, let's start worrying about how we can help others to see Christ and bring love. Guys, I know I went on a rabbit trail here for a minute, but here's the thing. We need to guard our hearts, and how do we do that? By getting into the Word every day and allowing Jesus to transform our hearts. Guys, I love you. I'm praying for you. I pray that you are in your Word every day, that if you're not, that you will develop a habit that you're in your Word every day, and that you're not just reading it, but that you're reflecting on it, that you're spending some time in it, and you're allowing the transformation to happen, and that you're spending some quiet time with the Lord and just spending some time and talking to Him. Anyway, guys, until next time, love you. God bless.